Mbui, thank you very much for your time. You watched the parliamentary spectacle. You listened to what the politicians had to say. What do you make of it all?
Well, Vuyo, thank you so much, and good evening to your viewers. Vuyo, it was good that Parliament met and the President has made these, commitments. Now, Vuyo, what is left now is, in fact, to see practical actions, to see real actions on the ground, to see as to where the money that has been promised, where will it go, how will it be spent. Vuyo, I speak with you, there are thousands of women who still feel let down by the justice system, who still feel let down by police. So Vuyo, I agree with the President. The time for talking is gone, it's over.
Where do you think the money should go?
Well, Vuyo, if you read our shelter report, the Commission for Gender Equality recently produced a very comprehensive shelter report. And when you read that, you would realize that, organizations doing amazing work, which ordinarily should be done by government, are closing down. A lack of resources. So that's one place where it should go. But also, how do we train our police men and women so that there is no secondary victimization, that survivors of rape would feel confident that they'll be listened to, they will be attended to. I speak with you. There are lots of women out there who still feel that the police have no clue about what domestic violence is, sexual violence is, Sexual Offences Act is. So these are the places that you can do immediately something about it. But obviously, as the Commission, we exist to monitor this, to make sure that we'll hold the President to account. We'll ask the President tough questions. And some of the tough questions are, we should have time frames, Vuyo. It can't just be a nebulous thing. It must have time frames within which we as a country commit ourselves and say that by X date, we should be seeing visible results, Vuyo.
Mr. Botha, allow me to bring in Lisa Vetten, who is a research associate from Wits University. Lisa, good evening. Thank you very much for your time. First, the same question I asked Mbuyiselo Botha. What did you make of what you heard and what you saw in Parliament today?
Well, the President sounded a lot more confident than he did the last time he spoke, and I think he was a lot more specific and concrete. You had a sense that some thinking and some planning had gone into what he'd said, and he gave a figure. That's all a great improvement. Of course, the devil is going to be in the details. And I think what's also going to be quite a risk is to see there's money now. Who's it going to attract? What sort of interests are going to come into effect? Could that money end up being wasted? And I think listening to some of the MPs, I just caught what Musi Maimane was saying. That worries me. To say something like the Domestic Violence Act is outdated, that means you don't really understand the Act and the implementation. So I think my concern overall is that we've come up with the same solutions. There's a body of research that said what government is doing wrong and not getting right. I don't see that having been infused into the National Strategic Plan draft, for instance, that is being floated at this point in time. And I think at the end of the day, we still have the same government officials implementing the laws that they've not been implementing or been implementing very badly. So I think we've yet to grapple with the problems within government that make laws not to work as effectively as they should.
I want us to get to that body of research and what it's telling us and whether, in fact, it's aligned, with what MPs had to say today. But I want to go back to the point you raised about Musi Maimane, because it goes back to what I wanted us to interrogate first before we even get to the specifics of what the President and people like the Minister of Justice had to say. And that is the whole point of a sitting of Parliament, because in every debate, MPs tend to grandstand. The EFF was complaining, for example, about not having had sufficient time to look at, to prepare for this debate. And I'm wondering whether the idea or what the point of a joint sitting was, and whether, from where you sit, it's something that was bound to achieve anything.
I think, as the President said, what it did was it signalled what protesters wanted, was some kind of recognition that this is a serious problem. So I think it did that. The quality of debate, that's a different question. I mean, as you said, I think it was very inappropriate for the EFF to be wanting to make points about grandstanding. Some of the discussions that was being raised by MPs on the floor show that they don't really understand the specificities of the issue. So I would be very concerned about if they were the ones to take over, for example, the suggestion that they look into and come up with what are the root causes of violence against women. There's lots of that research already. Please don't let the MPs do it, because they're not actually trained as researchers and would not do a particularly effective job.
And Mr. Botha, the point of raising this issue of the debate, because I can also recall, ahead of the elections, the Commission for Gender Equality invited political parties and judging by their responses, by also who they sent to go and represent them during those sessions. They concluded, the Commission concluded that political parties don't take gender-based violence as seriously as they should.
Absolutely, Vuyo, you are correct. And that also goes to the heart of the matter, how this country regards GBV. You see, Vuyo, the sad thing is that we always close the stable when the horse has bolted. Vuyo, I tell you now, of the Chapter 9 institutions, the Commission for Gender Equality, its budget keeps on being slashed every year. And if I have to ask you, the President talks about the Commission and other structures. I mean, why is it that the Commission for Gender Equality, I mean, when there are austerity measures, it is the first casualty. It is one organization that you go to slash. Does it not tell us how this country regards gender in totality, or gender-based violence in particular? You see, Vuyo, the sad thing is that we always make this noise, and tomorrow it's business as usual. I tell you, I bet you a penny to a pound. After 2 days, 3 days, we will all have forgotten about this. We will not even go back and ask the President, where are we now? Parliamentarians, MPs, where are we now? Where is that money? Where is it going? The sad thing is that what we're seeing in our country is that issues relating to gender are but just by the way, but just your miscellaneous. You forget about them. Wait until there's another tragedy. Wait until there's another man who has killed 4 of his children. Then we gather again, lament and talk and complain and pull our hairs. But as to real, practical, visible actions, dololo.
Lisa Wetson, I mean, Mbuselo Borda talks about how the Gender Equality Commission becomes the first to to get their budget slashed. And he also mentioned earlier, the fact that a lot of people, NGOs, that are doing a lot of good work in this area are closing down.
Well, I think that's why it's going to be so important to look at how that 1.1 billion is actually allocated. Because I appreciate the acknowledgement that the President made of the many women's organizations who for years have been struggling on very meagre resources provided by our own government, I might add, basically being exploited and working for free. So I would like to see how much that 1 billion goes back to those women who do that work. Because I think part of the problem in the NPO sector is the meagreness of the subsidies that government provides. The Department of Social Development, in many instances, provides subsidies to certain, those who work in shelters, for example, and sometimes those in those Tutuzela care centres, that are actually below the minimum wage. So I think if government is going to be giving subsidies, it needs to be obeying its own laws. So that's going to be really, really important. I think, I think what will also be important is to ensure that this money isn't taken to just employ more government officials. So much of work around violence against women is being absorbed by paying state officials rather than going to actual programs. It will also be really important to see this money going to employ prosecutors, because there's no point opening up these specialised sexual offences courts, and they were announced that there would be more, if there isn't the money to pay the prosecutors. And if we look at budget announcements earlier this year, there's something like a 25 to 30% vacancy rate within the Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit, which runs some of these specialised courts. So it's going to be super important to see where that money goes.
Mbuselo Botha, apart from the fund that he spoke about, President Cyril Ramaphosa also urged Parliament to urgently pass a law that will prevent suspects charged with rape and murder being granted bail.
Vuyo, that's a very, I mean, it may be symbolic, but it's important because I'm asking myself whether it will pass, the constitutional muster. I mean, it will not be challenged in court because we really have to understand the meaning of bail, that bail does not mean or denote that one is whether guilty or not guilty. I mean, it's important that there are these low-hanging fruits that we can do and to tighten our laws, to train our policemen and women for you, so that they really, really understand when survivors report rape, they are not, victimized again. So what am I saying? I'm saying that it's important as a country to go back and say, how do we bring back the confidence in our justice system, in the police? Are the statements taken correctly? Are they responded with empathy? Vuyo, is it possible that those who are gays, lesbians, intersex in our country, when they go to police stations, they have the necessary confidence to believe that the police service is there to support them, to protect them, and to be available to them?
Now, the Minister of Justice, I mean, you will have seen from the package we played, Lisa, was saying, let's use evidence to develop policy. What does research tell us?
It tells us that actually government is not using evidence right now. So I think the general public is also having a bit of a knee-jerk response at this point in time. What the evidence is telling us is that probably half of alleged rapists are never arrested. So what about the half who are out there because the police skills around detection are not what they should be? It's also telling us that less than 7% of rapes result in a conviction. So what's the point in focusing on sentences when you have so much leakage going on in the criminal justice system, where you need to fix up things like the police investigation, the medico-legal examination, and the prosecution before you can even get to questions of sentencing for life? I think the same goes for the idea that we should make the sex offenders register public. If we look at evidence and we turn to the US, which has had Megan's Law in place for must be 20 years now, which has been about notification, registration of sex offenders, the research has said it made no difference. It did not bring down the number of sexual offences, and in fact, what it cost was not worth the value that was put into it. And again, I'm going to go back to some of the research that I've done with the Medical Research Council looking at rape. What that told us is that about 30% of those who are arrested for rape do have prior convictions. Only 5% of those are for rape. 14% were for hijacking, housebreaking, robbery and theft. So once again, we have this false idea that those who commit sexual offences are going to go out and do it again. Actually, no. Rape sits within a broader spectrum of violent and criminal conduct. And so we've got to look at that part of the behaviour as well. We cannot just narrowly focus on rape alone and think that if we do that, it's going to make us safer. We have to look at the broader problem of crime and how rape is interwoven within it, and that those who commit rape are also very often hijackers, housebreakers, and committing theft, not necessarily rape.
Now, the EFF MP Ndombo Vuyomende proposed that Parliament establishes a call centre to enable women and children who are victims of gender-based violence to report that case. Your thoughts, Mr. Botha?
Well, you know, Vuyo, we already have, social development has a program, has a call center. It's like saying that we need more laws, when in fact we are failing to implement what we have. Now, is it not possible, is it not practical to, in fact, ensure that the social development call center is beefed up? It's supported, there are resources there, but also you have your lifeline. These are NGOs doing amazing work. Is it not possible as MPs for them to say, we want to know the monies that are given, how much are they, what are they used for, where are they going? So what am I saying? Let's not reinvent the wheel. You already have structures. Support that which is working, that which is not broken. Now, if you go back and say, have another call center, you have not convinced me that, in fact, the ones that are in existence are not working. So make sure that you make them that are present to be effective.
Lisa?
That is exactly the problem, is I think MPs are there exercising oversight over issues they don't know about. So you've had Musi Maimane making comments around that show he's not particularly well informed about the issues of the Domestic Violence Act, and you have the EFF showing that they don't actually even know what services are out there. So that is a real concern. It seems to me that one of the starting points, if we really want MPs to be able to exercise effective oversight in relation to gender-based violence, is that they need to attend some training around what is already in place, where is it not working, and what are the kinds of questions you should be asking ministers and DGs when they come to present. And I would strongly suggest that they actually start to ask those who work in the field to come and sit with them when they do oversight, to ask them and say, these are the questions you should be asking. Because when you read parliamentary minutes, you sometimes think, but why are you asking these questions? Do you actually even know what's going on here? And I think in that way, it means they cannot hold government departments to account because they don't ask the right questions. They don't know what to ask.
Now, it's not Mbuyisela Botha, just an issue of MPs, as Lisa says, dabbling or dealing in issues that they know very little about. It's also a question of people not doing, not practicing what they are preaching, isn't it? Because you will recall during that Pulemabe saga, where the ANC was found to not even have policies in place that deal with sexual harassment, for example.
Exactly. Yeah, Vuyo, exactly the point I was making earlier, that you see, the sad thing about us as South Africans, we're just like firefighters. We come after the fact. And when we have to do the real work which is, within communities, making sure, yesterday, the Commission for Gender Equality, yesterday in Limpopo, we had a session with trade unions throughout the country about sexual harassment, what is happening, where women, Vuyo, every day who are teachers are violated, and there is this closing ranks among unions. So what am I saying? I'm saying that indeed there needs to be a lot of work, lot of reading, spade work among MPs, so that they know that already there's no need to reinvent the wheel, because the resources of establishing another call center may be diverted to already what is existing. So why do you need to reinvent the wheel?
Quick last question, Lisa. Did you get a sense, certainly from listening to those MPs, that notwithstanding the reservations that you have, the fact that they lack knowledge and are therefore not in a prime position to actually ask the right questions, did you get a sense, though, today, overall, that there is some movement?
Look, we have political will. We haven't had political will in over a decade, and that's very important. And the point is, even if people don't have the world's most creative ideas, if they just make sure that what we have in place is effectively implemented, it will make a difference. And I do want to give them some credit for the fact that they bothered to show up. They were there, they put their ideas there, they were responsive, they did hear the fact that a great many women are frightened and anxious and angry. So I think the fact that they showed up and they did make the effort is something one should commend, and one does hope that one can harness that and make it last for the next 5 years of their terms.
Mbuyisela Botha, quick last word.
Vuyo, let's not wait for another death for us to stand up. Let's not wait for another tragedy. The momentum, let's keep the momentum. But let's put this money into programs. Let's ensure that men of our country, they are saying with one voice that violence will not be perpetrated in our name, Vuyo.
Mbuyisela Botha, Lisa Vetten, thank you to both of you for coming through this evening.